Welcome to Find My Voice. On the live show, we are broadcasting live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube this week. We're also on the podcast, which is the delayed audio. You can listen to that. Make sure you hit subscribe as well. As we talk to people who have found their voice, to inspire you to find your voice. And this week, it's thought leadership, and there is only one person I know who is a thought leader. Well, look, there's plenty of thought leaders. Before we dive into some of those questions, Verity Craft, welcome to the live show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. And I very much enjoyed that intro music. I was like jamming behind it as we went.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go. Always good to start with a loosener, even on a live show. What are tell us three things about Verity Craft that perhaps the audience doesn't know.
Okay. Oh, well, I feel like lots of people know this one, but it's a big part of who I am, which is that I'm a complete musical theatre nerd. So I love to perform in my spare time. So when it comes to finding my voice, I have a voice in many different ways. And I absolutely love just being on stage and singing and all of that. I used to be a debater at high school. That was my big thing. I actually did less performing then. I did a lot of debating. Probably just as much at home as at debates, but you know.
Which speaker were you? Were you 1, 2, or 3?
I was nearly always 3, so I always liked I started off as 1, but yeah, I always liked the coming in, being quite impromptu, and I think that some of that is what I now pull into my work in terms of challenging people and looking at things from a different way, because you are forced in debating to look at things in a certain way, even if you don't agree with that personally. So it was good practice in that way. And
number 3.
Third, yeah. I'm a proud cat mom. God, that sounds lame. But I love my cat. He's like the coolest thing ever. So his name is Ratchet, after the game Ratchet and Clank, which you can tell from that my husband chose the name, not me. But he's pretty awesome. He's hanging out down there.
Funny you mentioned Ratchet before you mentioned your husband, but that's okay.
Yeah. He would do the same as well.
Nice. Let's talk thought leadership for those people who kind of want to get some tips earlier on. Can you define thought leadership in a sentence?
Yeah, so thought leadership is essentially how you take ideas to scale. So it's the process of, I often talk about it being made up of 2 concepts. So you think thought and leadership. It's the thinking, it's developing and evolving your thinking. And then it's the leadership, which is being out there, inspiring people, bringing people along for the journey, helping them get better in whatever way it is. So it's those combo of those 2 things.
You mentioned getting better. Can you give us an example for somebody who is sitting on the fence about kind of being a thought leader or putting themselves out there? What does being better mean to you?
Being better to me is about like this process of continuous improvement. So, I don't think that there's an end point for any of us. There's not like some perfection that you can reach. I think that being a perfectionist is probably one of the hardest things that you can be, because you're never going to reach perfection. So for me, it's just about consistently getting better and ideally helping other people get better as well, not in a condescending way, but giving them the tools and the ideas and frameworks that if you've discovered something and learned something, either by yourself or through working with clients, sharing that with other people so that they can then also improve and get better.
And isn't it great seeing that transformation in people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the coolest. Like that's I think what most of us want, is to be able to have an impact on people and help people be better, feel better, do better, work better, whatever it is, whatever space you're in. Certainly I want that for myself, and then I want to do that for other people. And so it's really cool to get to see that and to get to see clients have that impact as well.
Can anyone be a thought leader?
I mean, yeah, theoretically, anyone can be a thought leader.
You don't need to be smart and wear glasses, and you can.
I would argue that most people are smart in some way, and it's about figuring out, where you're smart. But to me, thought leadership is a practice. So a little bit like exercise or yoga, it's something where you might not be used to evolving your thinking or spending any time thinking in the first place or coming up with ideas. If you decide you want to have an impact and you want to do that via thought leadership, then there's no reason why you can't. It's just a consistent practice of evolving your ideas and then sharing those ideas. But, that's not to say that everyone who is out there, that's famous or that's well known is a thought leader, because they might not be devoting that time to actually evolving their thinking. So I think anyone can be, but there's very few people who will actually do it and become one.
So if you were working with a client, where do you start? You said you start in that thinking space. Well, what are some of those core things that you look at when a new client sort of arrives on the desk? Tell us where you start.
Yeah, so we always start with what is the unique position that you're going to own, or the unique way that you're going to add value to the market. So we use a model that we call PEN, which stands for purpose, expertise, and need. So if you want to have a real impact, it's often got to be driven by the fact that you've got a purpose. So to put effort into thought leadership, it's not as easy as something like, marketing, where you can just put lots of money into something and it'll get results. You might use marketing as a tool, but you have to put a lot more into thought leadership. So you've got to be driven by purpose and understand why you're doing what you're doing and where you want to get to. Then there's your expertise. So understanding actually what do you know enough about and what are you experienced enough in to share that expertise, because if you haven't really done anything, then probably you're not going to be adding huge amounts of value, and you should go out and learn some more first. So thinking about what that area is. And then need is thinking about who are you going to help? Like, who are you here to serve? So who's your audience? What is their biggest need? What's the big goal that they're trying to reach, or the big pain point that they're trying to solve? And really looking at how those three combine together so that you can come up with something that's quite unique and that doesn't just add noise to the market, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes I've been adding a bit of noise on LinkedIn for sometimes 2 years, and I largely agree with everything you obviously said then, and I think it's about positioning your expertise and then talking to I was at James Kemp or other people kind of talk about that. I help X get Y through Z. It really does kind of position your expertise. So how would you say that? I help X get Y through Z. What would you say?
Well, it's going to be different for every person. So for me, it's not about the formula. It's about the picture that you're trying to paint.
Got it.
So the way that I often talk about it is, what's the picture that you want people to have in their heads of you? And you're going to paint that in lots of different ways, because you don't want to constantly say the same words. You don't want to constantly say, I help X get Y through Z or whatever. You might say that once or twice, but it's more about painting a picture. So sharing content, creating things that really help people understand what your expertise is, that help them build trust with you because they know that you're an expert in it, that help them see your purpose, that help them know, yes, this is for me and that's what I need. So for me, it's about what's the picture that you're painting through everything that you're doing, as opposed to like, what's the one phrase. And we'll work with clients on getting their messaging right, but they're still going to use that on things like their website. Whereas then when they're consistently posting, they're not going to say the same thing over and over again. They're going to paint a picture that creates the same feeling.
So let's paint that picture, the Verity Craft picture, about you finding your voice, because this live show could have been how to become a thought leader, but really it's how did you find your voice, your singing voice? Where does that come from? Because I think a lot of what that is, or what that inspiration is, inspires what you do now.
Yeah, totally. And I think what I'm trying to do as I get older and a bit more experienced is trying to figure out how I bring together all the parts of me, as opposed to trying to become something that I see somebody else being. So, singing wise, my family is quite musical. So my sister started doing theatre my older sister started doing theatre when we were all quite young. And for a lot of years, I really wanted to do theatre and I really wanted to be part of it. But she was always the singer. And so I would do shows, but I was always the I wasn't as good, and I didn't have the same natural talent. I've now worked on it quite a bit more, and I think compared to lots of other people, I probably had huge amounts of talent. It's just, she was phenomenal. And so for a lot of years, I think it was about, I really, really wanted to be doing what she did, and I really wanted to be her, and then getting really frustrated when I couldn't do all of those things. Until I think eventually I found the joy of it for myself. And funnily enough, I now do a lot of theatre and she does none. And she's kind of trying to find the joy in singing again personally. But it was quite interesting, like to have to go from, I think, always wanting to kind of be as good as, and then discovering that actually I'm quite different and I need to like work on what makes me different and what makes me good, and find the joy in that, I guess.
You said there was a tipping point where you just said you gave up trying to be like your sister. Can you remember a time when you kind of discovered that?
Oh,
can you was there a particular show that you were in? Was it a moment on stage? Because I might have done a few shows at the Pump House, perhaps not in musical theatre, but you're standing there on the stage and just have that little aha moment of going, man, I love this. You've got the audience in the palm of your hand, and anything's possible. Can you remember that time?
I don't know if there was one specific moment, but I think one of them was, I remember being at Centre Stage, which is in Orewa in Auckland, Ottawa, I should say, actually. And I was doing a production of Godspell, which is a real ensemble piece, and I love doing ensemble pieces because there is nothing like being on a show with other people. And I had this song that it was one of the ballads. It was quite like, it wasn't as fun as some of the others, but being able to like sit there and connect with everyone really emotionally and doing really effectively, and having people kind of say that was my favorite part of the show, even though it was, quite slow and quite different to the rest of the show. I think I started to have those feelings of going, this feels like me. This feels like what I should be doing. And not necessarily as a career, but just being on stage and being able to kind of connect with people emotionally. And I think that was what made a big difference, was feeling that, as opposed to being like, oh, I'm the star, I'm out here. And I've had other shows where I was more of a lead and I was more featured, but I think there was something about that emotional connection, both on stage and then with the people who are in the audience, that really made a big difference.
And, how do you unpack that? Because, there's a lot of, we talk about the fourth wall in theatre. You might sing to the lighting guys, but are you looking at people? In terms of that connection, I get it, being present to the words and present to what you're saying, and then you're present to the emotion and the emotion that they're getting. Do you engage with them physically on stage?
I love to. I'm a weirdo though, so I really love watching people while I sing. I know a lot of people who will look over, like if they're auditioning, they'll look above the people who are auditioning. I am not one of those people. I love to make eye contact and to try and tell a story with people. And I think that's what makes it fun for me. So sometimes when you're in a bigger stage and you can't see anyone in the audience, I have to focus on, making sure that I'm engaging with the other people on stage, because that's what makes it then fun, is that emotional connection. So definitely for me, it's the actual engaging with people. I know that that's not the case for lots of other people, so I might be a bit of a weirdo in that regard.
No, you are not weird, Verity, because I remember emceeing a mall show in Australia, and I think I was interviewing Michael Klim, and it was the day after the Sydney Olympics, and I remember looking at people in the front row and really engaging with them. I think a lot of MCs or performers kind of want to throw their voice and talk to the audience, ladies and gentlemen, but there's nothing quite like that moment when you look someone in the eye and they're like, oh, pick me, or I want to ask a question, and you just get that emotional connectedness, and it's just magic. Moving forward for you from a business side of things, you would position yourself as a writer. Where did that come from? If you were doing musical theatre, where did the need to help people create their thought leadership journey, where did that come from?
Quite randomly. Like, to be honest, I probably wouldn't call myself a writer as the first thing that I am. Like, the writing is something I happen to be good at and can use as a tool. It's not really who I am. And I think what I love about it and what I discovered, so I started off, when I came out of uni, I had no idea what I wanted to do because I'd studied French and Spanish. I had no real career path. And my sister introduced me to Christina, who's now my business partner, because she thought that might be something that I'd like to do. And at the time, it was a copywriting business and did a little bit of PR as well. And we got along really well. And so I ended up working for her to start with. And then over time, we just discovered that we, really complementary and loved working together and things. But I think the discovery of what I really love to do and how I can really help people has been a really organic one through the process of building Intelligent Ink and changing it. So like, we got rid of PR a few years ago and decided to focus purely on content. And then we realized that the stuff that we were really engaging with and helping people with was this thing called thought leadership. And the part of it that made it fun and that where we could add the value that maybe a really great writer, any other great writer couldn't, and there's a lot of really great writers out there, was in the pulling stuff out of them and helping people kind of develop their thinking and their ideas and really challenging some of those, coming up with cool ways to communicate those that were going to be more interesting. And so it came really naturally and has just kind of evolved. And I feel like I've learned a lot more along the way of the fact that you can be really good at something, but that's not necessarily the thing that like lights your fire. So it's finding the thing that's both, that you're really good at and that lights your fire. And for me, it's the people side of it again.
Yeah, and look, I think it's, there are plenty of content marketing agencies out there, but there's very few thought leadership agencies. And I think what you're effectively going deeper because you're right. It's really the questions that you ask to extract that that content that you're going to obviously create for them or create that picture. It really is a deeper thought, and I really love that. If people were watching the show, they weren't going to work with Intelligent Ink, but you kind of wanted to sort of send them on their way, any kind of 3 tips that you would suggest to people if they want to develop some thought leadership for themselves or for their wider business, where would you say to start?
Well, for me, so I talk about the 3 C's of thought leadership, which are clarity, consistency, and community. So first would be get really clear on who you are and the value that you can talk about. So when I talked about the purpose, expertise, and need, if you can get really clear on those and have an idea of what space you want to own, then you can start to create things that sit around that and paint that picture. Then there's the consistency, and this is both in terms of dedicating time to actually thinking and evolving your ideas. And I do things, I've got a whiteboard in the corner over there that like every now and then I dedicate some time, but also every now and then my husband will just hear me run in and go furiously start writing things as I've thought of stuff. But actually set aside, even if it's just half an hour or an hour or 2 hours, like actually set aside time to go like, what am I trying to achieve? What's the problem? Thinking about that. And then committing to consistently sharing that. So whether that's just using LinkedIn, whether that's an email database, whether that's you've got a media column, whatever it is, whether it's speaking, just commit to actually consistently sharing those ideas, because that's what's going to help bring people to you, but also help you get feedback on those ideas. And then community. So it's find the people who you can work with and partner with who want to share your ideas. Start to connect with people on LinkedIn and actually have conversations so that you understand where other people are coming from. And if you can consistently, if you get really clear on who you are, you consistently evolve your thinking and share it, and then you build a real community around you. Like that's really all it comes down to. It's not tricky. It's just something that you have to commit to and do over and over again, which is why I call it a practice as opposed to like a campaign or something.
Gotcha. And look, I can see the PR sort of coming out. We talk about channels or communication channels, and you said whether it's, whether they've got an article, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's from a PR angle, we talk about multiple different touch points. What would you say to people who might have lots of different channels, but they're kind of lacking in the time to create that? What would you say? Is it just focus on where that community is?
Yeah, I think pick a few places and try and really focus on those. So like for me, LinkedIn's a big one because that's where I found the most community. So I don't really dedicate much time to Facebook or Instagram or anything. I use them personally, but not really for business. But yeah, so think of a few channels and stuff, but also think about as you're deciding how to use platforms, think about how you can do the thinking once and create lots of content out of it. So, for example, if you dedicate 2 hours to developing a new idea, what can that become? So we've got a cycle that we developed not long ago that's around how you develop and validate and make an idea better. And so we kind of put the time into that. I tested out a little bit in a webinar to see if people connected with it. I shared it on LinkedIn so that then I could get feedback. I've evolved it since then. And then now it becomes part of our offering. We've also we'll create a blog post off it. So do the thinking once and go, how can I use this in as many ways as possible? Because most people aren't going to see everything that you create. So you might feel like, oh, I'm repeating myself, but you're not really if you can just use that thinking and use it in lots of ways.
100%. We've got a couple of minutes left.
Cool.
And I did say at the top or before we came on air is there a particular song that you can give us a little minute of? I know that we've kind of connected on the Sound of Music. I Have Confidence. And I know that song really speaks to you. Do you want to have a crack at just a little
sure.
warm yourself up? Coming in 3, 2, 1, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, the amazing Verity Craft and I Have Confidence.
I have confidence in sunshine. I have confidence in rain. I have confidence that spring will come again. Just besides which you see, I have confidence in me. Strength doesn't lie in numbers. Strength doesn't lie in wealth. Strength lies in nights of peaceful slumber. When you wake up, it's healthy, all I trust, I leave my heart to.
Well done, bravo. I love it. Sing
That's my
on
hype
LinkedIn
song.
Now you do have a show coming up this year. You want to give us a little plug on your show?
Yes, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm part of Wicked, which is on at Wicked the musical on at Sky City from the 10th of September till the 2nd of October. So I'm in the ensemble, and I'm also the memorable understudy. So I might get to go on as the villain, which would be fun. But the amazing Tina Cross is playing that part most of the time. And yeah, tickets are on sale at iticket.co.nz. Would love to see you there. It's going to be phenomenal. It's an amazing show.
Oh, fantastic. Verity Craft, thank you so much for joining us on Find My Voice. If people wanted to get in touch with you because they love your thought leadership, how do they do that?
Yeah, so LinkedIn's probably the best place to connect with me. So just Verity Craft. Our website's intelligentinc.co.nz, ink with a K. But yeah, always happy to connect with people and have a chat. And if you wanted to have a chat on whether thought leadership is the right approach for you, then always happy to talk about that.
Great to have you today.